Viserys and Killstop knew a few things. Killstop had had a rudimentary education under the Manted monks, and Viserys paid attention to the guides watching for nymphs leaving the water for the first time, long enough to say he was learned by dragonfly standards. Plus there was that time at that school he preferred not to think about. The former barely thought about those monks, and the latter had probably picked up more from the streets of various countries than he had gained from those guides, so most wouldn't say that they knew a lot of things. Something no one could deny, however, particularly not their victims or the would-be heroes who frequently chased them, was that they knew how to hide. The Mancer girl hadn't bothered to staunch her blood flow for quite a ways, and it was practically effortless for the Manted, nonetheless the all-seeing dragonfly, to track her until she did. At that point, the only logical path was toward the nearest beetle village, unless she wanted to try her luck in the nearby forests with a severe injury and an unwilling captive. Although Killstop had told that insane ant, although was there any other mental state ants could hold, an obsessive lobster, nothing about his plan to follow the blood trail, he had informed them of his scuffle with the necromancer and suspected they thought he and Viserys had a plan. If they were far behind, it was only because ants and lobsters weren't particularly fast sectons. Unfortunately for his plans, the pair had stolen from this village, quite a few times actually, and their faces were known to the local authorities. Nedra could walk right in if she could get her hostage to cooperate, and the ant and her lobster merely had to ask for a Mancer's location, while he and his companion would have to be craftier. Fortunately for his plans, a lack of craftiness was not one of the pair's many flaws. Half of the village extended into the desert that separated the collective land of the Beetle tribes from the supposedly commonly held land of the All Nations. The other half was sheltered by the massive forest that had grown from the massive rivers a small way to the east, which is where Killstop had found the tree where his bright green body could blend right into the foliage, and Viserys flitted between stretches of twisted branches that were just thick enough to hide him from any passers-by that weren't specifically looking for someone, and thin enough that he could move out easily. As expected, Nedra had come to the village. She seemed to be asking for water and medicine, but that didn't answer the question of where in the realm of the thoughtless spirits the male ant was. Okay, so she didn't plan on bringing a hostage into a village of people he could talk to. That makes sense. She would have to keep him nearby, presumably trapped somehow, so the beetles wouldn't find him and he wouldn't run away. Any idea what the male ant might be? Killstop wasn't certain how to answer Viserys' question. Did you see any caves when we were approaching? Definitely a lot of uneven rock formations that could hide caves. Most were too far away. She wouldn't risk putting him all the way out there if she was over here. Two possibilities at a reasonable distance, if memory serves. My memory, of course, just like the rest of me, is always willing to serve. Killstop made what passed for a silent groan. Can we trust that she would have looked for any dangers before leaving him in a cave? Antlions are normally pretty rare, and unless the Arachnid Collective has personally decided to screw us over, I doubt a spider from the Trapdoor clan would be setting up a cave this far south. Though, considering that this is the Collective we're dealing with, you really can't say that they haven't decided to screw us over for some reason or other. Probably because you took something important. Me? What about you? I had the wit and sense of self-preservation to only take what people are willing to pay money to give back. You always want things that people kill over. Mantids, also vindictive. Killstop rolled his eyes. When you're raised among the followers of the thoughtful spirits, you don't really learn a difference between a possession and a valuable possession. Oh, no wonder you are never even the slightest bit remorseful when you eat my food without asking. Killstop decided their position was secure enough to respond to the jab of one of his own. We're taught that those who give to the less fortunate when they have nothing to give are the closest to enlightenment. You really should be thanking me. I'm helping you reach total enlightenment. Well, as long as that means you recognize yourself as my lesser. Killstop, frowning in defeat, continued to stare at the necromancer. 2 caves. When should we make our move? Selphist hated deserts. He was a creature designed for water. By the egg layer, his kind once had a city beneath the ocean. It was unfortunate that they had needed ointments and other things grown on the surface to ward off the vicious and unimaginable beasts of the deep, or his people might have escaped the fungoids there and avoided everything. As it was, circumstance had forced him to follow the increasingly distant splotches of Mancer blood in the sand. The color was a disgusting red, it was just unnatural, alongside an ant that he felt compelled to please, and looking for another ant in the hopes that he might be able to convince 3 queens, all infamous, to go to war with the fungoids. Circumstance was even worse than a desert. The trail ends here, he noted, dismayed that there was no sign of either dragonfly, mantid, mancer, or ant. The Lady of Fire's antennae quivered. The male left behind a little bit of scent. I can barely make out that he went in this direction for quite a ways, then seemed to suddenly turn. Selphus had lived in the city of all nations for long enough to have a base idea of his external geography, and almost slapped himself for missing the obvious. There's a forest, not too far from here. It marks the official border of the beetle tribes. She probably went there. Would she find aid? Most of it is empty forest. She'll find food and water, if nothing else. There is a village. One of his pincers started rubbing against his shell in thought. They wouldn't risk offending the queendoms. However, if she could hide her motives, then I'm sure these villagers would be most gracious. It's a mancer and an ant, after all, not a crustacean. But a little bitterness slept there. Selphus made a note try not to do that in the future. The Lady of Fire seemed not to notice his complaints, however, as she trudged on where her scent led her. It didn't lead her very far, apparently. Although they were much closer to the forest, even passing a few sparse trees that had dared to grow away from their more temperate home and giving Selphus a little bit of self-satisfaction, when the ant stopped and proclaimed she lost the scent and their target was nowhere to be found.